Hi, today I'm going to use Eric Carle's The Very Hungry Caterpillar to represent and walk you through my journey in the ECS 110 class. I'd like to think of myself starting in the position of an egg at the beginning of this class. At the beginning of the class, I was eager and hungry to learn new things. Throughout the rest of the video, as the hungry caterpillar eats something, it will represent something I have learned. The hungry caterpillar first ate an apple, which in this case represents the Canadian identity. One of the first questions we were asked was, what does it mean to be Canadian, or what makes up the Canadian identity? Our common answers were friendly, welcoming, hardworking, farming, and so on. I never thought the normative narrative around the Canadian identity was problematic in the fact that Canadian history is typically written from one point of view, and minorities are often left out or generalized into one group. Next, the pair will represent white privilege. We discussed white privilege, which made me kind of uncomfortable because I knew it was a thing within society, but I never understood my own privilege until reading the examples in Peggy McIntosh's article. Next, the hungry caterpillar ate racism. The one thing this semester that I was really appalled about was the topic of the First Nations headdress. I could not believe that so many people could not see the problem with non-Indigenous people wearing a headdress. All I thought was, what the heck, it's 2018, how can people be so ignorant? The hungry caterpillar ate treaty education, settler identities, treaty relationships, and multiculturalism next. I found these topics made me kind of annoyed in the fact that we learn about Indigenous people from grade 1 to 12, but I feel like there's so much important information left out of the curriculum. I also think the myths about multiculturalism are very true. Many political figures and organizations just use the word multiculturalism to feel like they are working towards something, when really they do not do much, and this is also really unsettling. The hungry caterpillar then ate common rebuttals. Chapter 11 in Is Everyone Equal taught us about common statements or responses to denial of certain topics. I found this topic really made me think about times I could have possibly used rebuttals or when others have. Gender was the next thing the very hungry caterpillar ate. I found gender really interesting to talk about, so I ended up taking a positive space training course with UR Pride. I think it's a really important subject to talk about because I want to create a welcoming environment in my current job and in my future classroom. Next, the hungry caterpillar ate classism. Classism, I think, has a lot of components, which makes the subject really complicated. When we did the privilege walk-in class, I was far to the right, which did not surprise me because I have been very comfortable my whole life. But the activity made me feel bad and guilty for my position compared to the others. Lastly, the hungry caterpillar ate disability. Disability was a really interesting topic for me because I can understand the stigma of people with disabilities, but I specifically had a hard time wrapping my head around the concept of transabled people, and I still have lingering questions where I feel I need to further research the topic. Drew, the very hungry caterpillar, collected all her information and thought about how does choice factor into identity, and which parts of identity are a choice and which parts aren't. The butterfly represents who I've become. I figured out the true things that make up my identity. At the beginning of the semester, I referred to my identity as more descriptive words like dog lover and genuine and athlete, whereas now I would use my identifying words as cisgender, white settler, able-bodied, and treaty person. Before the course, I was very neutral to controversial subjects, but now I know that I can be neutral because of my privilege, and I'm not comfortable with just being neutral anymore. Transferring this into relation to my teaching identity, I think knowing my own identity and privileges will help me become a better and more inclusive teacher in the future.